Hello again, and welcome to part 3 of 8 in the 8 Parts of Speech video series. In this video, we will be talking about pronouns. This video will cover what a pronoun is, we'll discuss antecedents, and we'll talk about the types of pronouns: personal, possessive, reflexive, demonstrative, indefinite, relative, and interrogative. Let's start with a simple definition. A pronoun is a word that is used in the place of a noun. In English, pronouns are generally used to avoid saying the name of something more than once in a sentence, or to group a bunch of things together into one word. For example, instead of saying, Mark rode Mark's bike to work, where Mark handed in Mark's report to Mark's boss, which is just all kinds of confusing. I mean, how many Marks are there? We might instead say something like, Mark took his bike to work, where he handed in his report to his boss. Similarly, instead of saying Mark, Tina, and Lou all went to lunch, where Mark, Tina, and Lou all ordered different sandwiches, it would be much simpler to say Mark, Tina, and Lou all went to lunch, where they all ordered different sandwiches. When we use pronouns, the noun or nouns the pronoun is replacing is called the antecedent. In the first sentence, Mark is the antecedent for the pronoun he. Now, sometimes the word his can be a pronoun too, but in this case they are functioning as possessive adjectives, and we'll talk about those in the next video. In the second sentence, Mark, Tina, and Lou are collectively the antecedent to the pronoun they. It is very important that in a sentence with more than one possible antecedent, that the pronoun is clearly referring to only one noun. For example, in the sentence, Mark and Jeff went to get his car, it is unclear which of them owns the car in question because his could refer to either of them. You will want to avoid confusion like this in your own writing. Now let's talk about the types of pronouns. The vast majority of pronouns you'll see out in the wild are personal pronouns. These are the most common pronouns used because they refer to the most common types of nouns. Personal pronouns can be subjects or objects, meaning that they can show up at the start or end of a sentence, and they differ a bit depending on how they're used and whether they are singular or plural. The first-person subject pronouns are I and we. The second-person pronoun is you, and the third-person pronouns are he, she, it, and they. The first-person object pronouns are me and us. The second-person object pronoun is still just you, and the third-person object pronouns are him, her, it, and them. Apart from the personal pronouns, there are 6 other types of pronouns. First, there are the possessive pronouns, which indicate ownership. Common possessive pronouns are hers, his, mine, yours, its, their, and ours. Next, there are the reflexive pronouns, which refer back to the subject of the sentence. These are formed by adding the suffix self or selves to a word. Like, for example, myself, yourself, ourselves, and so on. The demonstrative pronouns, and there are only 4 of them, express that a certain person or thing is being talked about. The demonstrative pronouns are this, that, these, and those. Basically the opposite of demonstrative pronouns, indefinite pronouns are used to refer to a non-specific person or thing. These pronouns include everybody, none, anyone, somebody, and so on. Relative pronouns are used to introduce a subordinate clause in a sentence. A subordinate clause is part of a sentence that cannot stand alone by itself as a complete sentence. Common relative pronouns are who, whom, whose, what, and which. Finally, interrogative pronouns, like what, which, who, whom, whose, etc., are used at the start of a question to which the answer is some noun. Notice also that words like what can be both interrogative or relative pronouns depending on context. Lots of pronouns work like this. They can function as one or another type depending on how they are used in a sentence. Hopefully, this gives you some context for pronouns and antecedents and maybe helps a bit in knowing how to use them correctly in English grammar. Thanks for watching and tune in next time when we will be talking about adjectives.